Hi and welcome to the video. Today's topic is quite interesting. I wanted to talk about a few important qualities that I don't see mentioned frequently when it comes to improvement. I've been coaching people for the past 7 years. I have a lot of experience when it comes to helping both newer or older, lower or higher division players. Everyone's unique and has their own things to work on, of course. But there has been a few notable problems that I've seen occur more often than others, mainly because there hasn't been put enough emphasis on them. I should know because I'm guilty of doing one of these myself, so stay tuned to find which one that is. First topic of discussion today will be mechanics, micro, champion piloting. A question as old as time. Which one was first? Was it the chicken or the egg? Which one is more important, being mechanically good or having good macro? The answer to both of these questions will vary depending on who you ask, and reasonably so, they're both very controversial. Jokes aside though, champion mechanics, micro or piloting, whatever term you want to use, is one of the most neglected topics in terms of improving your gameplay. There are two reasons for why this is the case. The first one being, improving mechanically is a hard and infinite process. You're never going to be mechanically perfect, since there's too many things to mess up. You can play out the situation perfectly, but throughout a game of League of Legends, you will mess up somewhere. For instance, you can play out the teamfight flawlessly by having a good engage, hitting all of your abilities on the right target, do a very good champion combo and win Baron off it. Right after though, you go and split push, but you go and completely misplay a 1v1 fight due to you missing your very important ability and messing up your champion's movements, resulting into a pointless death. A complete contrast from the teamfight you had earlier. And of course, you don't need to be flawless. Perfection is something we aim to achieve, knowing fully well that we'll never achieve it, but the idea to get there should be the driving force to constantly better yourself in this aspect. Proper champion piloting is expressed in everything you do, from trading to all-inning during the laning phase, from finding good angles to enter teamfights to actually killing enemies during the fight, from using your abilities in the correct sequence to how you position and maneuver your champion based on the specific situation. The second reason on why mechanics are neglected is macro is actually easier to improve on, but at the same time, quite effective. If you know when and where you should be fighting whilst an objective is coming up, due to you noticing someone from the enemies is off tempo because he took a greedy backtimer that only you noticed, and if you know how to abuse it on the map, is a very strong capability. An example, you notice that the enemy jungler stayed to finish his topside camps after a fight on grubs. You just reset and you're just leaving base. Knowing that after he finishes his camps topside, he will look to be on his botside camps. Now you can make a very overpowered decision that works better to lower the division. You can go to his blue buff bush and look for an isolated 1v1, in which you have the advantage in, due to him having to face check you. As long as you know you can win alone, you can abuse this position. Of course, you can even call allies for support if they're in a position to help. The faster you notice this, the higher chances of succeeding. And that's just an example of having good macro and combining it with other macro-like elements like jungle tracking. Now you might be thinking, that sounds very overpowered. Why are mechanics more important? Well, the thing is, it doesn't matter what you know if you can't execute it. Let's look at the same example. Imagine you went to the enemy blue buff bush, but you either miss your important ability, for example Lee Sin Q, because you're not sure how to throw it, or maybe you don't know how to enter the fight for maximum efficiency in terms of DPS, or maybe you don't know what combo is best to be used in this specific case. Whatever the reason for misplaying, only you know what it is and it comes down to you to do something about it. These misplays happen all the time in every elo, of course with Challenger having the least chance of it happening, but even there nobody is perfect as mentioned before. One thing is certain though, micro is used in everything, so improving on it is a must and should take priority over everything else. Okay, I get it, I need to improve mechanically. How do I do it? The thing is, it will be different for everyone, but the best, universal way that works for me and what I advise people to always do is limit test. Go in your next game. Take almost any 1v1 that you think you have a decent chance of winning and see if you can outplay the enemy. Let's say you're playing Aurora mid for example, and you're laning against the Sylas. You poked him down to 60 to 70% HP, whereas your HP is around 90%. Now ask yourself, if we fight to the death right now, do I win? If the answer is no, of course don't do it. But the answer should most likely be yes, so in that case, look to force it. Another important question you should ask yourself before and during fights. What needs to happen to increase my odds of winning? For example, in this case you can dodge his chain from his Z ability or hide behind minions and dodge the second part of his Q ability. There's a lot of things going into a 1v1, you just have to keep a calm mind and think about them in real time. And the other very important thing when it comes to mechanical execution is experience. There's a lot of skill checks in League of Legends, especially when it comes to mechanics. So putting in the time to be conscious when making micro decisions is very important. Before we go on to the second topic, I'm sure there's someone watching right now and thinking, macro is also very important. You're telling me I should just drop it and focus fully on champion piloting? And the answer is obviously no. Try to improve on them gradually together, with micro being the more important one, due to it being harder to refine. One last phrase I want to leave you with. Good macro can salvage bad mechanics, but good mechanics can indeed salvage bad macro. And they work best when they're both on a good level. Moving on, the next topic in hand is situation assessment. This term is pretty abstract, and I've seen some people talk about it but pretty rarely. So by situation assessment, I just mean how different people perceive and understand a given scenario. This tends to go under the radar when people explain things. It's very important that when we look at situations, we not only understand what needs to happen from our own point of view, but also how it looks from other people's perspective. Mainly because it will help us sometimes make better judgment calls in games, but also help us improve in the long run. So best way to show you what I mean is with an example. For this one, I'll use a real game since it's hard to explain with just images. But before we look at the actual fight and the result of it, situation assessment happens before and during the fight, constantly updating based on how things play out. But the very first understanding of the situation is extremely important, since that's when we make our biggest decisions. Generally, when assessing situations, you need to look at anything that's important, like mine and our teammates' cooldowns, mainly ultimate ability status, but also any key ones like my W. The overall champion numbers, is it a 5v5 or 4v4 or maybe something else? The game state in terms of items and levels. What are the stakes of the fight, aka what objective are we fighting over for? And anything else significant, example, someone overextending or someone being low HP. This is a game on my second account in Diamond Elo. So if we look at the previously mentioned criteria and apply it to this situation, what does it tell us? We're lacking most ults but have key ones like Qiyana and Xayah, and also mine is coming up soon. In terms of champion numbers, we have the bigger number right now, but of course the enemies will respawn soon, so we should think of it as a 5v5. The game state is pretty good. We should feel like we're pretty strong given that our levels are higher and we have better items. The stakes are if we win the game, and we don't lose practically anything for trying. As long as the Drake doesn't equal soul for the enemy team, of course. The significant thing to take in consideration is Qiyana doesn't have access to Bush for invisibility, and she's low HP together with the Maokai, meaning that from their point of view, this is not a good time to fight. Now with all that in mind, we should be feeling somewhat confident going into the fight, but let's see how it plays out. Yep, as you can see, we lost the fight. Now, given the information we had before it started, this should have been not a bad fight to take. But as we know, we're human, so everyone makes mistakes, and sadly there's no way to quantify human error with so many variables. The reason why we lost the fight is because Xayah used her ult too early and then she stepped up afterwards. Maokai did a good job by tanking the Fizzled, but mistimed his W and the damage went through anyways. Nuno wanted to run away given his fall back pings, but eventually decided to go back in when it's too late. Every time something bad happened, I could have updated my situation assessment and decided to not go in. But I didn't. Main reason is I knew that no matter what happens, we aren't losing almost anything important. Because we're in the enemy base, no significant objective is up, and these skills are most likely not enough for them to catch up back into the game. But of course, if I'm extremely strict and this is an important game for me to win, there was no need for me to ever die here. I could have just bailed the moment things didn't go nearly as good as they could have and potentially fought on Drake with Qiyana, given that the enemies have a lot to worry about in their base. Analyzing all of this is something everyone learns to do naturally throughout their hundreds of thousands of games, but it is a skill set that we can improve on almost all the time. In order to do that, there's a few things you can do. Gather more information. Press tab more often, pan your camera to actually look at situations and not just the minimap. Do not play with locked camera outside of PvP. Rewatch your games and go over winning or losing situations. Put yourself in the enemy's and ally's shoes and think about why it worked out or why it didn't. Play different roles and champion archetypes outside of your comfort ones. Of course, preferably not in ranked games until you get comfortable in them. While to obtain champion mastery, you need to focus only on a few champions. Playing a lot of different champions will help you expand your knowledge when you end up facing and playing with them. There's a little more that I can expand on when it comes to situation assessment, but I'll leave that for a different video since it requires its own separate topic. If you're enjoying the video so far, I'll really appreciate if you drop a like, subscribe, and let me know if there's anything I can improve on. Any constructive feedback is welcome. Moving on to the last segment of the video, and that is consistency. There are two types we can look at: consistency in terms of playing enough games, and consistency when it comes to productively improving in the actual games. Starting off with the first type, it's pretty self-explanatory. You need to play games regularly in order to gain but also solidify your knowledge in all aspects of the game. Playing games too far apart makes you rusty. Of course, not everyone has the luxury of playing a lot of games, since life happens, and that's fine. But let's say you can play X amount of games a week. As an example, let's say X equals 15 games. Look to play them as close to each other as possible. This way you're less likely to mess up your first game of the day due to you not playing recently, and also makes you feel more disciplined, like you have a schedule. League of Legends is a game. For some it's a hobby, and for some it's a job. I'm a strong believer that it doesn't matter what you do in life, always give it your best. Play as many games as you can afford and want to without messing up your everyday life. You can make immense progress with little amounts of games, but of course the more you play, the more likely you are to get far. For the second type of consistency, it doesn't matter if you're a new or more seasoned player. At one point, just spamming games stops giving you almost any value. While you can learn things by just playing and autopiloting, you start creating bad habits. Habits of not gathering information via not looking at the minimap, situations, and scoreboard. Habits of using the same ability sequence no matter the situation. Habits of playing the laning phase the same way every game, or pathing to the same lane without putting much thought into it. Of course, everyone has them built in due to doing the same thing over and over, at least to a degree. How much you let them control the way you think and what decisions you make because of them comes down to you. You need to consistently be conscious about anything you do in the game. And in order to get good at it, ask yourself questions. The enemy champion just used X ability. Can I punish it somehow? He decided to roam. Is it better if I stay or match it? What are the benefits and which one is more worth? We just finished a fight. What summoner spells and big cooldowns did they use? Can I force a fight around that information? Where do I need to be on the map right now? What's the next most important thing? These are questions any high elo player asks themselves, but it happens really fast due to us having tons of experience. So if playing a lot of games equals experience, playing a lot of productive games equals precise experience. Consistency used to be my biggest problem, but for a whole different reason. When I play League, I enjoy my time. I always want to become better, so sometimes I overdo it. I play too much. The last thing I want to leave you with is this. Once you notice that your game stopped being productive, stop playing for the day or the given time. If you want to improve, productivity is key. And that's the end of the video. I actually got sick halfway through the video, but I still wanted to make the video as soon as possible. I hope it didn't ruin the experience, and I also hope you enjoyed.